Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Agnihotri, for the introduction. So, as Mr. Agnihotri mentioned, the subject, the role of mini grid for enabling 24/7 power for all. I think this is a statistic everybody is familiar with. India currently has about 83 million rural households who have little or no access to electricity, which hinders their socio-economic development. I mean, in terms of population, that translates into 250 million people. So that is a challenge which the government is trying to address, and the Power for All 24/7 is the mission of the government to bring power to every village and every household by 2019. Now, some of the studies done recently by the International Climate Group suggest that at the current pace, if the current pace of development continues and with the traditional development, over the next 10 years, only a 5% improvement will happen in this sphere, which means that, if there are no innovations and there is no acceleration, there are no new solutions brought into play, there is not going to be a big difference even 10 years from now to the rural energy access situation, which underpins India's economic progress, growth, and socio-economic landscape. Now, basically, which brings us to there is a need to deploy an alternative solution which can complement and supplement the government's mission of 24/7 rural electrification agenda. And this is where the initiative Smart Power India, which was established by the Rockefeller Foundation to implement this program, which we call Smart Power for Rural Development Program in India, which is a global initiative of the Rockefeller Foundation, but it is spearheaded and initiated from India, because out of the 1.3 billion people in the world who do not have adequate access to electricity, almost 250 to 300 million are in one country alone, which is India, and therefore India is the launching pad for this initiative. And the mission of Smart Power India is provisioning of reliable electricity to the villages, basically with the purpose of socio-economic progress and development. Electricity is a key catalyst and today a key constraint for the rural communities in their path to progress, or the opportunities that they can have if they had access to reliable, affordable electricity. And therefore, this program has chosen the innovative approach of renewable energy mini grids, and I will explain why that platform was chosen and why a need for enabling environment is necessary to further that initiative, which can really scale up and make a big impact in the agenda for 24/7 electricity for all. And on the side is the map of India, and the red areas indicate where there is the maximum need, or the maximum population resides which do not have access to energy in the rural India, which is, as we know, UP, Bihar, and Jharkhand. They alone account for about 80% of the 250 million population that we speak about, who do not have adequate access to energy. And therefore, our program also focuses and has begun in India to take that initiative starting from UP, Bihar, and Jharkhand. Now, what happens in a village where electricity is inadequate or not there at all? The traditional approaches or means available to the people is kerosene and diesel generators. And this is also creates, while they use it for their lighting and other purposes, but this also creates many other harmful impacts both on the environment as well as to their own health and safety. And we know the government there goes on has a huge subsidy bill related to subsidizing kerosene and diesel, and there has been this effort to, what can be a solution which can be environmentally sustainable but also brings them, the kind of electricity that they would need. Now, in the sphere of off-grid energy access, there are many solutions which are out there. To begin with, solar lanterns, and they do play a helpful role in replacing kerosene and providing certain basic level of lighting which is equal or better than the quality of lighting that kerosene affords them. Then you have individual solar home systems which can light up a little bigger area, possibly can run a fan, possibly can run a television, requires battery change, requires a big capital outlay on part of whoever is acquiring it. Certain rural banks also provide credit for acquiring that. And then you have pico grids, which are again basically larger solar home systems in small hamlets, which can be put on the top of one roof, and a few households connected through wires strung over trees, etc., which can provide lighting, mobile charging, etc. But what we realized was one thing that most of these solutions cannot do is power commercial activity or enterprise or irrigation, which is where economic progress takes place. These solutions do provide lighting, better lighting, safer lighting than kerosene or diesel, but it does not go forward to provide their commercial requirements or productive uses, what we call productive uses, or uses with which income generation can take place, powering irrigation, powering equipment, powering various other activities which can lead to income generation. And that brought us to renewable energy mini grids, and basically which is the generation can be through renewable energy sources, solar, biomass, or a combination of these, or even wind, depending on what is the most suitable renewable energy source for the location. But these are on scale which are much larger, which can provide the kind of grid electricity which the normal grid provides. 3-phase alternating current or a single phase alternating current depending on the energy need of the village, generated in the village for the village right there. And the advantage here is, while it can do all the things in terms of lighting up homes or home equipments or energizing home equipments, what it can do is energize all kinds of enterprise activities, including irrigation pumps, and irrigation and agriculture is omnipresent in all the villages. And therefore, this was the solution which was which is at the core of Smart Power program to promote in India. The other advantage of this method of solution is it can be quickly deployed. Within a month to 90 days, village can be energized. And the other important aspect is that it can integrate with the larger national grid in future and provide the last mile resilience, as well as in a way to coexist or integrate with the national DISCOM grid in future, as and when it becomes necessary or required. So that is why the mini grid as a model for rural electrification, or furthering and complementing the rural electrification agenda. It has various other benefits, related to environment, etc., which are obvious. But there was a big challenge. While the solution seemed quite appropriate to further the rural electrification and provide the kind of energy that uh, people would require and that can promote economic progress in the village. The problem was that there are no credible operators. Nobody is interested in building mini grids out there. There was a year ago complete policy vacuum in terms of recognition that mini grids can be a solution. There are nobody was willing to finance mini grids because there is no proof of commercial sustainability or scalability there. Now, due to that, the Rockefeller Foundation put forward that an initiative which is Smart Power program in India, which would not only provide technical support, knowledge support, implementation support, as well as the very critical element of bringing in the risk capital initially to fund and support the energy service companies who would be interested in going ahead and building and operating the mini grids in rural India. So basically the purpose was to bridge this gap and bring in the funding, get committed energy service companies to go and build the mini grids and prove a case which would encourage both the government as well as the financiers to look at this sector seriously and support its scale up going forward. So to give you a quick understanding of the whole mini grid model, and we recognize that the mini grid cannot be a solution for every village. There is a particular profile of the village that is necessary for mini grids to be commercially sustainable, and therefore a very important criteria is the site selection itself, and I will describe a little later why site selection is an important criteria, because the village energy demand has to be of certain size today and projected to be of a certain size in the near future for an energy service company to operate viably in that environment. So the site selection is a very important criteria, followed by just acquiring the right kind of technology and size to service the village. Then you go on to the most difficult task, which is actually convincing the rural consumers and the whole community to understand that this is here to stay, this power is reliable and this can be affordable, and you will receive high quality service in the village from the power service company. And then comes further the scope of, as you start serving the customers and there is reliability and there is new demand, how do you scale up your power plant in the village to service future need? And at every stage of this journey, the Smart Power organization works with the ESCO to support them through the process of site selection, where technology is required, creating linkages with the technology companies, supporting in community engagement and customer load acquisition, and any support that is further required. Different ESCOs would require different level of support and different kind of support. And last but not the least, the financial support that the program brings in. Now, the basic model of Smart Power village is that the village profile should be that there are at least 100 to 500 households there. The grid electricity is inadequate or intermittent or not available. There is a good mix of household as well as potential commercial loads, plus pre-existing commercial loads that may be existing today, powered by, partially by grid, generators, batteries, all those elements. And the other critical element is it makes the whole model way more bankable if there is a anchor load available. And anchor load by meaning an institutional load which can take care of 25 to 30% of the capacity of the power plant and signs up for a long-term power purchase agreement. It makes the model, quickly break even on cash, and becomes much more bankable. And we find often that in rural India, the telecom towers are often powered by diesel generators, and they have high cost of overheads, maintenance, and diesel theft and diesel mafias operating around that, due to which they would love another energy service company who can provide them assured power. So, as I will describe later, many of our ESCOs have gone on to sign up with telecom tower companies for their anchor load requirement. But there can be other anchor loads like banks, institutions, fuel stations, petrol pumps, and just a collection of large commercial users. But in our experience, we found that telecom towers are almost present in every rural setting, and they could be potential anchor tenants for a smart power plant or the mini grid plant that is operating there. What does a mini grid operator or the company that is building and operating mini grid, what is the whole chain? So first is generation, and the generation is renewable energy source, and it can be solar, it can be biomass, it can be a combination of the two. Then you have to put up the distribution lines, and the distribution lines our ESCOs put up is to the CEA standards. They are exactly the standards that are built by any other discom company, sometimes superior. Then you have to connect to the customers from your poles that you have laid out in the villages, and then you acquire customers, you sell to them, you collect revenue, and you service them, and you are right there in the village, and therefore it is almost 24/7 service for the villages. So this is the the mini generation and discom model of a mini grid. So we have seen about 7 ESCOs who have joined the fray, very brave and courageous ESCOs who have gone on to now build and operate about 95 mini grids which are operating in UP and Bihar. And the program has partnered with them in providing them support on one of those some of the various areas that I indicated, plus already provided them financial support or in the process of bringing in additional financial support that is required for their scale up. And as of now, 28,000 to 30,000 customers have already connected with these services, and there are very encouraging signals which are coming out from the customers in terms of the reliability that they are experiencing from the mini grid that are servicing them. One of the great fears of everyone going to these villages is, will the customers pay us? Because the perception is rural customer is used to getting free electricity and therefore will not pay. In 1 year of operations from these 95 mini grids, and there are many more mini grids which are in the pipeline and being constructed, one of the myths that have been broken is that the rural customers, if serviced properly, are really very good in paying for their services. In fact, we have 92% on-time payment for the monthly electricity charges, and the other 8% is not on time, but they may be delayed by a week to 15 days. Now that is a great revelation and a and a data that can provide huge confidence to ESCOs who are going to come into this field, or the investors who are going to finance mini grids in future. So, like keeping the future in sight, these mini grids are being built to the safety standards of CEA, the technical standards laid down by CEA. They are also built in a manner that they can in future interact with the main grid when it is there, and it is of the standard that caters to all kinds of loads that are available in rural India. Now coming to a very major area which impacts and influences the whole mini grid sector, which is the policy environment. And like I mentioned a year ago, there was no policy for specifically for mini grids, and that created a huge sense of risk and a lack of recognition that mini grid is being recognized by the government as a solution which can complement and supplement this agenda of 24/7 power for all. But a year hence today, I'm happy that there have been very encouraging developments on the policy side, both at the national level and at the state level, starting with UP. And first the mention of in the national mini grids in the national tariff policy, followed by very recently it's almost imminent that the MNRE is going to come out with a mini grid national guidelines for mini grid for the states, as well as a national target for mini grids of 10,000 mini grids or 500 megawatts of mini grids for the country. But one of the most encouraging development is the UP mini grid policy, as well as the regulation which was announced about 3 months back, which has really given a huge impetus to the mini grid sector. And Mr. Jaideep Verma, who is the chief regulator of UP, is unfortunately not here, but it's there is for the mini grid sector, he has done a phenomenal in terms of the policy, that regulatory policy and the framework that they have come out with. He has provided a enabling environment for mini grids to grow and prosper. And some of the key features of the policy I can quickly enumerate. One is about that the tariff can be determined in agreement with the consumer in the marketplace. So that is a big positive for the mini grid sector, that mini grid operators can tailor their tariff in consultation with the community and the customers of the village. So they have not prescribed a tariff. That is a very important flexibility which was asked by the mini grid operators. The second, which is from the long-term risk and long-term sustainability of the mini grids. In one of the greatest risks for what happens when the main grid arrives, and on that 3 very clear solutions have been provided and options have been provided to the mini grid investor and the operator. That is, one, the mini grid can coexist with the DISCOM grid and be in parallel competition with the DISCOM grid. Second, mini grid can integrate and sell excess power to the DISCOM grid at a tariff which can be mutually agreed between the mini grid operator and the DISCOM. And the third is that the mini grid operator can exit by selling the asset to the DISCOM grid at a mutually determined, based on a mutually determined formula. Now these are 3 very important asks for the mini grid sector, and as well as current operators and investors in terms of de-risking their investment and their operations. So I think this is a hugely commendable step, and some of these principles we hope are carried forward by other states into their policy and regulation as well. So overall, the detailing of many of these policies, as the operators operate on the ground, there will be more refinements required. But I think these are extremely encouraging steps in providing a policy environment and support for the mini grids. Now, what could the mini grid sector, what are the other things that can give the mini grid sector a boost? First is that the proof of the concept, how it's working on the ground, presented to the world of investors, government, and the public at large, which makes it an investable case. And on that, our cohort of ESCOs are working very hard every day. It's a tough job operating a mini grid in the rural villages and providing top class service to them. And soon we will have enough credible data to present to investors, operators, and to the government and financial institutions at large, which make it an investable case for everybody to crowd in and scale up the development of mini grids. There will be further refining of the policy that has already been announced in UP and at the national level, but we also hope that the other states, particularly Bihar and Odisha and Jharkhand, quickly adopt the best elements of these policy and come up with supportive policy for the mini grid sector. Also, with now the government announcing, already it is publicly known, is going to announce formally a target of 10,000 mini grids of 500 megawatts for mini grids. And I think the whole process of MNRE's subsidy disbursement, the speed and transparency, and facilitating new players to enter the fray, that will be of key. And other opening up new channels of financing the mini grid sector. So if some of these things are, there is further development in the coming months and the year, I think the mini grid sector will receive a huge boost. And there are many very large Indian operators as well as international companies which are poised in discussion with us right now to enter the mini grid sector, given the encouraging developments in the last 1 year of the existing players and the evidence they are producing, as well as the policy framework. So we expect to see a lot more action in the mini grid space in terms of momentum and scale up, hopefully when we meet next time at this time. Thank you very much.